In the stillness of dawn, Althorp House awakens under a veil of mist. The marble corridors whisper with echoes of forgotten names, portraits gazing down with eyes too knowing, too alive. This is not just the birthplace of a princess. It is a vault, a centuries-old chamber of secrets carved in silence and sealed with blood. Long before the world called her the People's Princess, the story of Diana Frances Spencer began in a house that seemed built to remember. Althorp, vast, proud, and eerily timeless, stood as both monument and mausoleum. Every brick spoke of ambition, every gilded crest of alliances crafted in shadow. The chandeliers glittered like captured stars, yet the air was heavy, thick with something unspoken. For 5 centuries, the Spencer line had lived here, not merely as aristocrats, but as custodians of a secret lineage, one that threaded itself through the veins of kings, courtesans, and bastards of the Tudor crown. The Spencer name had always been close to power, but never too close. A delicate dance performed in candlelight. Generations understood that their fortune was tied not to open declarations, but to what was left unspoken in dusty ledgers and coded letters. At the heart of it all was a woman. Her name lost to history, but her bloodline never forgotten. A Tudor child, unacknowledged, yet protected, hidden within the folds of noble marriages that followed. In the portrait gallery, the camera would linger on Diana's 18th century ancestors. The soft crackle of a fireplace, dust dancing through a single ray of light. The painted faces seem almost alive, serene expressions masking centuries of quiet fear. A narrator's voice glides like wind through an open hall. They were never the kings nor the queens, but they carried the king's blood. And that, in the courts of England, was both privilege and curse. Letters preserved in the Althorp archives reveal a pattern. Marriages to families that once served the Tudor household. Alliances sealed not by love, but by lineage. The Spencers were not climbing the ladder of nobility. They were guarding a secret, generation after generation. Beneath the west wing lies a small chapel, its stained glass dimmed by centuries of dust. Once, according to a 17th century record, it housed a burial unmarked and unnamed. Locals called it the resting of the red hair. The tale tells of a child and a girl with flame-colored hair and eyes like the late King Henry's, brought under the Spencer protection in 1550. Her existence was never recorded in court documents. Yet her features were painted again and again in Spencer portraits that followed. Coincidence? Or the careful preservation of a face that should have vanished? Centuries later, Diana would be born beneath the same roof, her golden hair shimmering in childhood photos, a trace of that same Tudor flame. No one could prove the connection. But the symmetry of history rarely speaks in coincidences. The Spencers had become something more than a noble family. They were a living archive of England's forbidden history. And Diana, unknowingly, its final chapter. As she walked the marble halls of Althorp as a young girl, she would pass the portraits without knowing that their eyes were not just ancestors, but witnesses to secrets sealed before her birth. The camera drifts outside into the fog-soaked gardens. The statue of Diana's great-grandmother stands by the fountain, her marble eyes turned toward the house as if guarding it still. The narrator's voice fades into the mist. In Althorp, every shadow tells a story. And every story carries a warning that blood once royal never forgets its crown. Beneath every crown lies a shadow, and beneath every noble name, a secret. As the 17th century dawned on England, the Spencer family rose quietly through the ranks of the aristocracy, their fortune expanding as if guided by unseen hands. But those who studied their lineage saw something uncanny. Marriages that defied logic, alliances that repeated familiar names, bloodlines that seemed drawn toward one another like fate itself. This was no accident. It was preservation. For centuries, whispers followed the Spencers, rumors of a red thread that bound them to the throne. In the smoky taverns of London, gossip claimed they were keepers of the lost royal child, while historians dismissed it as family myth. Yet buried among the parchment of Tudor archives were traces of a story too persistent to ignore. In 1528, records mention a maid of honor in the court of Henry VIII, a woman named Cecily Blount. She vanished from history's eye after giving birth to a daughter, whose name was never recorded. But 50 years later, a noblewoman named Alice Spencer, Diana's ancestor, appeared in Elizabethan court circles. Her family suddenly elevated, her dowry vast. and her resemblance to the Tudor line unmistakable. Coincidence? Or continuity? The survival of an unacknowledged branch of England's royal blood? By the time of the English Civil War, the Spencer family had perfected their art of survival. They did not fight for kings. They married them, quietly, strategically, through cousins and widows, keeping the bloodline intact while the monarchy itself fractured. One marriage stands out in the family archives, that of Robert Spencer and Lady Penelope Wriothesley, a descendant of Henry FitzRoy, Henry VIII's acknowledged but illegitimate son. Through this union, the Spencer bloodline absorbed the last trace of direct Tudor descent still flowing in private veins. And from that moment onward, every generation bore the silent burden of royal inheritance without the crown. Hidden within Althorp's library is a book seldom shown, a family register bound in crimson leather, its edges worn by centuries of secrecy. It is said to list marriages and births with coded initials, omitting certain names entirely. In one faded line dated 1704, a curious entry reads, B.S., heir to the flame, baptized in silence. No historian has ever identified who B.S. was, but local lore ties it to the legend of the Red Line, a whispered tale of descendants who carried the same fiery hair, the same storm-gray eyes said to echo the Tudor curse. To the Spencers, it was not myth. It was legacy. As centuries passed, the family prospered, their estate expanding, their titles multiplying. Yet behind every portrait there was a calculated calm, an awareness of something that could never be spoken. To be of royal blood without recognition was a privilege and a danger. One wrong confession, one careless remark, could ignite scandal. And so the tradition became ritual: marry well, protect the secret, never speak of the blood that binds you. The chapter closes in the Althorp library. A caretaker's hand brushes dust from the crimson ledger, revealing the faint imprint of a Tudor rose embossed in gold. The narrator's voice descends into a whisper. The monarchy forgot its children, but the children never forgot their blood. Lightning flashes beyond the windows. For an instant, the reflection of Diana's portrait shimmers upon the glass. Her eyes align perfectly with those of the unknown Tudor child painted 5 centuries before. The story of the Spencers was not meant to remain within English soil. By the dawn of the 18th century, their blood had begun to travel, crossing oceans, interweaving with the rising power of a new empire across the Atlantic. History would call it the age of exploration. But for the Spencers, it was the quiet migration of a secret, one that would one day connect the House of Tudor to the White House. In 1754, Charles Spencer, 3rd Duke of Marlborough, married Elizabeth Trevor, linking the family to the American colonies through trade and diplomacy. What seemed like commerce was, in truth, continuity. Among the Spencer archives, letters exist between the Duke's agents and colonial governors, written not in the formal style of politics, but in the tone of kinship. Your Grace's distant cousin, one letter reads, sends regards from across the sea. The cousin's name, John Washington. By the time America declared independence, 2 bloodlines, the Spencers of England and the Washingtons of Virginia, had already been bound by silent threads of shared ancestry and mutual ambition. History remembers them as symbols of 2 worlds, monarchy and republic. Yet beneath the surface, their genealogies whispered the same story, the fusion of old European nobility with the birth of American power. Picture the camera following a storm-tossed ship crossing the Atlantic in 1760. A trunk lies in the captain's cabin, stamped with the Spencer crest, a golden shell over crimson velvet. Inside, family records, sealed letters, and one miniature portrait of a woman with unmistakably Tudor features. When that ship landed in Virginia, it carried more than cargo. It carried history. The Spencer lineage began to intertwine with colonial families, the Byrds, the Randolphs, and even the Washingtons, forging a transatlantic dynasty whose descendants would one day sit beside both monarchs and presidents. Charleston, 1790. Candlelight flickers on silk gowns and powdered faces. At the center of the room stands Lady Charlotte Spencer, her accent refined, her smile reserved. When asked about her English heritage, she replies only, "We are of a noble family." Though our story was never meant to be written, she would marry into the Middleton family, one of the most powerful in colonial America, further sealing the transatlantic fusion of English and American elites. The old world's blood had found a new throne, influence. In 19th century correspondence preserved in Althorp's archives, a faded letter from 1821 reads, "The line continues. Our cousins abroad prosper. The secret is safe. The handwriting belongs to a Spencer matriarch whose descendants would later intermarry with families tied to the Roosevelts and Churchills, weaving the same invisible thread through corridors of both royal palaces and political power." By the time Diana was born in 1961, her family's story was already global. Her ancestry reached beyond England. It was the culmination of 500 years of quiet unions between power and secrecy. The final image, a modern-day aerial shot of Althorp House fading into an image of the White House at night. Lightning illuminates both, two symbols of empire, two heirs of one bloodline. The narrator's voice, steady and haunting, closes the chapter. From palace to presidency, from crown to constitution, the same river of blood flowed unseen, and in its reflection stood a woman named Diana. Every dynasty carries its curse. For the Spencers, it was not madness or ruin, it was repetition. Generation after generation, the same story unfolded. Women beloved by the people, trapped by power. Men haunted by duty and silence. It was as if an invisible hand guided the family's destiny, repeating the same heartbreak written 5 centuries earlier in the Tudor court. And in Diana's lifetime, the curse would return, wearing a crown of gold and tears. The curse began, as all royal tragedies do, with love denied. In 1536, when Anne Boleyn fell from grace, her ladies-in-waiting carried away not only her belongings but her secrets. Among them was a woman named Mary Shelton, rumored to have borne a child by Henry VIII before Anne's downfall. Her descendants, through a web of marriages, would merge with the Spencer line. From then on, the family seemed to attract the same pattern: beauty, favor, betrayal, and loss. In 1667, Lady Diana Spencer, a namesake centuries before the modern princess, was engaged to the Duke of Bedford. The match promised wealth and power. But days before the wedding, the Duke fell ill and died mysteriously. She would die a year later, at the same age as her future descendant. The Spencers began to whisper, "The blood remembers." In the 19th century, Lady Georgiana Spencer, Duchess of Devonshire, another luminous figure of the family, became a public sensation. Adored by the people, entangled in scandal, and exiled by her husband's infidelities, she was the embodiment of the family's fate. Devotion met with despair. Her portrait, painted by Gainsborough, hangs in Althorp's Great Hall. Her eyes soft, her smile almost tragic. The camera pans slowly across it as the narrator's voice breaks the silence. History does not repeat itself. Blood does. In the 20th century, as Diana Spencer was introduced to Prince Charles, the parallels deepened. The engagement, the adoration, the confinement. Every step mirrored the ancestral pattern. Even the age at which her marriage began to collapse matched the ages of her predecessors when tragedy struck. Diana, unaware of the ancient whispers, once told a friend, "I feel like this has all happened before." She was right. It had, centuries ago, beneath the same chandeliers, beneath the same crest, beneath the same unbroken thread of blood. A letter found among the personal effects of Lady Cynthia Spencer, Diana's grandmother, reveals that the family believed in the curse. It reads, "We have always served the crown, but we were never meant to wear it. Those who come too close are taken." The letter ends with a warning: protect the daughters. They carry the light and the weight. The handwriting is shaky, as though written with fear. The camera returns to Althorp at night. Rain lashes against the windows. A single candle burns in the chapel where the resting of the red hair once lay. The narrator whispers, 5 centuries apart, 2 women named Diana, both beloved, both broken, both bound by the same invisible chain. Thunder rolls as the candle flickers. The flame sputters once, twice, then dies. Every secret demands a sacrifice. For 500 years, the Spencers had guarded theirs, a royal bloodline born in the shadows of Tudor palaces. But the world changed when Diana's story reached billions. For the first time, the curse stepped into the light. And when it did, the monarchy itself began to tremble. The year is 1997. In the quiet halls of Althorp, a storm gathers. Diana's final days play out like the echo of a prophecy. a life that began with fairy tale promise, ending in a tunnel beneath the city once ruled by kings. The narrator's voice, low and mournful. History does not end. It reincarnates. As the funeral procession moves past ancient stone and the sound of rain, the camera lingers on the faces of the crowd, millions who never met her, yet mourned her as though she were their own. They did not know they were mourning the last visible heir of an invisible dynasty. Weeks later, inside Althorp House, archivists opened sealed boxes belonging to the late Earl Spencer. Inside are letters, portraits, and a velvet-bound genealogical book marked "For Family Eyes Only." Within its pages, connections are drawn between names once hidden in royal ledgers, illegitimate heirs, unacknowledged unions, erased histories. At the center of the web stands one name, Mary Shelton, the rumored mistress of Henry VIII. Her blood, through generations, flows directly to Diana Frances Spencer. A royal line denied its crown, but never its power. Today, as Prince William and Prince Harry walk through Althorp's gardens, they step on the soil that holds 5 centuries of silence. They are the living fusion of what history once forbade, the official and the unacknowledged, the crown and its shadow. The narrator continues, "The monarchy endures not through titles, but through blood. And some bloodlines refuse to die quietly. A drone shot rises over the estate, sunlight cutting through the mist. The island where Diana rests glows faintly in the morning haze. In a quiet museum, a historian closes a new exhibition, The Forgotten Line of the Tudors. Among its artifacts is a small locket engraved with the initials MS, found near the Spencer vault. Inside, a faded strand of red hair. DNA analysis confirms an unbroken maternal line stretching back to the Tudor court. The narrator's tone darkens. For centuries, truth was buried beneath marble and myth. But even stone cannot hold back blood. Night falls over Althorp. The lake reflects the moon, pale, perfect, eternal. A lone figure walks the path toward Diana's resting place. The voice returns, almost a whisper. She was never meant to be a queen. Because she already was. By birth, by blood, by destiny. The camera fades out on the flickering reflection of the moon. The final frame lingers on the inscription carved near her memorial. Only do what your heart tells you. Silence. Then, the faint sound of a Tudor-era choir fades in, blending across centuries.